Welcome back to the chat. So you may have heard about this story out of Fairhaven, Massachusetts. An 18-year-old girl is charged with involuntary manslaughter because police say she not only failed to stop her friend's suicide, she allegedly encouraged him to go through with it. 18-year-old Conrad Roy killed himself by carbon monoxide poisoning last summer. Detectives say they found through text messages that the girl helped Roy choose a method of suicide and even instructed him to get back into his truck during the act after Roy sent a text having second thoughts. And joining us now is our legal contributor, Heather Quick, once again. I mean, I don't even know where you start with this one, but what are the legal standards for involuntary manslaughter?
Well, we go back to, you know, what was her reasonable duty? We really all do have a reasonable duty as human beings, and the law does impart on us some duties to assist somebody, but not to, maybe you don't have to save somebody, but to actively, you know, push them towards that, taking substantial acts. So she took some acts on her behalf, but for those acts, I don't know if he would have gone through with it. I mean, of course, we'll never know, and that is for a jury, but it's horrific. It really is. And when you read that and think, he's like, I'm scared. I don't want to do this. No, yes, you can. I'm going to miss my family. Oh, no, you can do this. Let me help you.
She was definitely encouraging
and I think even more than encouraging, and really directing them on how to do it. You know, the fact
do we know the connection between this girl
well,
and
then
her friend?
Well, then what is sick, and I will tell you, I think this is sick. Afterwards, she then posts, you know, all this, oh, I'm so sad. I miss him so much. I loved him. I'm like, this girl has serious problems.
Yeah, she's
seriously
like
mental problems.
Sociopathic.
It concerns me,
really,
and I think it should concern anybody.
Why a year later? This happened. It's taken this long for police to charge Michelle Carter, is the girl's name. Why this long? And because the suicide happened then, and is this the charge that is the most severe that she could face?
I think it is probably the most severe because she wasn't there. She wasn't present at the event, but you know, now we know with electronic social media, it's almost as if you can be there, instantaneous.
Absolutely.
But once you charge an individual with a criminal case, there are certain time periods that begin to occur. And you can't hold them in custody. You need to, you know, you can arrest them, but then you file charges. So many times in big cases, we're going to see that lapse because they've been investigating and they've been building the case and making sure that it is really strong so that when they charge now these time frames for speedy trial and how long you incarcerate somebody, they're ready. And so they are not going to be hamstrung by that. Sometimes you rush to charge somebody, the case wasn't ready, not enough investigation. So I would bet there was a full investigation and they have all the evidence they need, including 1,000 text messages that she sent him.
So if she's convicted, what is she looking at as far as sentencing goes?
Well, we're going to have to look at, are they going to be able to show some type of mental impairment on her part? And I'm not sure if she was a juvenile at the time this occurred. So then, you know, that would be one of the conditions. Would it be just probation? I'm sure they're looking for jail time. And to also take a stand and bring people aware of this is scary. This is, I mean, you don't even, it's so sad. It's so sad. And I think brings awareness, but then shows that this is not tolerated, and this is criminal. This is criminal. This is not some fun new thing teens can do to get their kicks off.
Another story that we wanted to get your take on, and a new legal development, and a story that we have followed pretty closely here on the chat. You may recall the Dallas nurse who contracted and survived Ebola after she cared for the first patient in the U.S. to be diagnosed with a deadly disease. Nina Pham now says she plans to file a lawsuit against her employer, Texas Health Resources, alleging the hospital she worked at while treating the patient failed to adequately protect her. Pham will be asking in her lawsuit for unspecified damages for physical pain and mental anguish, medical expenses, and loss of future earnings. Are you surprised by this and the story in this lawsuit?
I'm really not. You know, when all this was out, I think it was, you know, back in the fall we were talking about it, there were going to be a lot of issues. And the hospital does have a duty to protect their employees. Yes, you do assume some risk when you're in that job. Some, but you're supposed to have adequate procedures. So the hospital should have adequate policies and procedures in place to protect their employees and to protect, obviously, the patients. So if they had them and she didn't follow them, that's a different story, but that's not the case. She's saying, hey, they didn't have anything in place to adequately protect me from this type of disease, and they knew it was possible. You know, the Ebola, the issue, it was already in the media. They should have had some things in place to protect me, and they didn't.
And that is what her attorneys are working to prove in order to win this case.
Absolutely.
Now, this is a civil lawsuit. Do
Yes.
you foresee any potential for a criminal negligence suit that could stem from this as well?
I think that would be a harder one to breach, and that could be more, that's going to require more intentional. And I know it came up previously, like, well, with the patient, does he have some criminal issues because he didn't disclose where he'd been and things like that? I think that's going to be a harder leap to take criminally because the burden is so much harder, and we have a lesser burden in a civil case.
All right.
This.
Well, real quickly, we have one more story we also wanted to get your thoughts on. It all involves this Utah woman. We talked about it right before the commercial break, allowing, apparently, she is going to be allowed to proceed with a wrongful death lawsuit against herself for alleged negligence, I should say, in an accident that killed her spouse. So how is she able, have you ever heard of somebody suing themselves before? And what's the benefit? What's the upside of doing that?
Okay, well, this is what's going on. Okay, husband's dead. Now an estate is opened. Okay, so now she's the personal representative in the estate. So she has a legal obligation to go after lawsuits, anything that may benefit the estate. She also happens to be the recipient of the estate. So she was driving and insured. Now let's keep in mind, okay, insurance. So she is looked at this thinking, okay, there's a valid suit against me as the driver, and then having the insurance company come in and pay the damages for this lawsuit. I perceive that there will be a conflict of interest, and they should get another personal representative appointed. So not to say that it may not be a valid case, but basically she's suing herself to then receive benefit because she's going to inherit under the estate as well.
Well, that is very sneaky.
Crazy
indeed.
story.
If
Yeah.
it doesn't just confuse you trying to get it all
Right.
figured out.
It is.
So,
I know. I hope it didn't
know.
confuse you more, but it's interesting.
So
Yeah,
what about
absolutely.
the insurance company? Then could they countersue for some type of fraud or something like that? I mean,
Well, you know, all our insurance policies have a lot of fine print, and so then they may say, hey, you're the insured, you can't then receive the benefit. You're suing us on behalf of the estate. I don't know how much they'll get away with that. And it's not necessarily fraud unless it was intentional. So then they'd have to go on and say, hey, did
Right,
you
if she-
intentionally cause this accident?
Right.
Because we won't
Well, that's
insure
criminal.
you. Right,
Because her
that's
husband's
criminal.
dead. That would change
And
the whole
then
case.
collecting that money off that. So it'll be, I mean, you know, I think when we look at that from all perspectives,
Could that be a
what's
precedent
going
center? I mean, I've
on?
never
That's
heard
what
of
I- yeah,
anything
it's-
like that. We got to go, but I mean, if this were able to go through, I mean, it's such a weird circumstance. You wouldn't.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and I think she should have really replaced herself as personal representative before this all happened, but maybe she
Just
didn't
when you
think
think
about
you've
that.
heard it all,
Then there's
and
that.
then there's that.
And then
all right. Well, thank you, Heather. We appreciate you as always for being
Absolutely.
here. And if you have any questions or you need any legal advice, you can check out the Quick Law Group's website at thequicklawgroup.com. And still to come on the chat, is it true that men fall in love more often than women? Hear what a new study reveals, and we're going to have some advice from our relationship expert, Dr. Richard Marks, coming up next.